Well, I'd say number one is know your numbers. That means you got to know what your actual costs of doing business are, how much employees really cost you, and all of those things. So know your numbers, or else how do you know what to charge? Number two would be to realize that you're in a people business. Okay, customers are people. They're not a number. They're not commercial. They're not this and that. They're people. These people live in their own head, and you have to understand you're dealing with a person who is under stress. Number three is don't think that you can do this alone. I don't care how smart you are. I mean, I've got a doctor's degree in law, and I've got this, and I've got a college degrees and engineering type degrees, the education based background, 45 years in business, and I still don't know what I'm doing enough to start a company properly. Make a decision. If you're going to be in business, you're in business. And that means you got to know your numbers, realize you're in a people service business. And number three, you can't do it alone. So hire people that can do it better than you can, whether it's technicians or whether it's accountants or whether it's coaches like Pete that can help you with the branding. Don't try to do it alone, or you just your failure is absolutely guaranteed.
Hey guys, Pete Ramsey, HVAC Greatness. Glad to have you back for another podcast. Got a special guest today, Mr. Rob Cook. Rob, welcome to the podcast, first of all, HVAC Greatness. And you and I have known each other for a little bit now. And so I really wanted to bring you out and introduce you to a lot of the guys that follow on YouTube. And let's talk a little bit about what you're doing with your business and what makes it so unique and interesting that I think people are going to want to hear about this. This is pretty cool. So first of all, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Pete. And I'm glad to be here and glad to share it because I am a pretty good example, I think, of what you can help us do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're no newbie to business. You've been around the block over 40 years as a business owner. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. 40. Yeah. Right at 40 years for a similar name company that I have in Virginia. It's in our 40th year.
Now, is that heating and air conditioning?
No, it's not, but we do a lot of that, of course, because we're a general contractor doing remodeling there. And so we do just residential only, and we add additions and remodeling to houses and often double the size of them. So our average job size is about $350,000, of which, HVAC work may be, depending on the duct work or whatever we're doing in the old part of the house too.
Yeah.
Would be a large part of it, but we're not HVAC contractors there. I have 4 architects on staff. They're full time that do our design, build, and design, all the process we go through, and they do the manual J calculations the way it works in Virginia, Arlington, Virginia. And so they have to put that in and do all those with the design for the building permit. And then the HVAC subcontractor comes in and does the basically the equipment designation.
So that's in Virginia. What about where you are now? You've got 2 different businesses in 2 different locations, correct?
Correct. So my company here that I'm currently involved with personally in Wyoming, I retired from the Virginia company, and I started this company literally. This would be interesting to you guys that are just thinking about doing this. First of all, I'm 66 years old, and I literally got my HVAC mechanical master license about 8 months ago. So this is how fast I'm moving. And I started out, and I had been doing some HVAC, but I'm mostly self-taught. Never went to trade school, never did any of that stuff. So anybody that thinks you can't do it or it's too late to change or whatever, well, try to take a look at my situation. I'm kind of an oddball because I just like working more than I like golfing or playing or anything else. So I enjoy it. The reason I'm doing this Wyoming business is because the last business I started was in 1986, and that was the Cook Brothers in Arlington. I was actually in Arlington, Texas, and then I started the company, and then I moved immediately to Arlington, Virginia, which is right where the Pentagon is, right next to Washington, D.C. And that's where I relocated in 72 as a child. My dad is an Army colonel, so I moved there, lived there for a long time, went to high school in Arlington, then went away, did my thing all over the country and whatnot, and then got back there. And when we started the company in Virginia, there was no internet. There was no cell phones to speak of. Only rich people had them, basically, or businesses. And it was just a different animal. I had to pay $24,000 for a 1-page yellow page ad, of which about 98% of it was wasted circulation over the Washington metro area. 1 year, $28,000, and I was like number 27 page in the
Wow.
page. 27th full because it
I,
was
I
always.
remember those days too. Yeah, I had yellow
Oh,
pages back
God.
in my day.
So I paid, just throwing money away, but it
Yeah.
got us started and we got going and we got up to a pretty good volume level and almost got knocked out of business in 2008. It was a very scary time after we'd been in business for, 20 years already. And so it's never, never sit back on your laurels. So anyway, long story short about that is the reason I'm doing this business now is because I'm bored and I like doing it. I literally retired when I was 37 years old from life and from business with a seven-figure income, net income while I was working, while I was just playing, not working. And then I bought a bunch of rental properties, because that's another hobby of mine is renovating, buying properties. I got my real estate license back in 1978. So and interest rates were 20% then, by the way, for 30-year fixed. So I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of things about real estate and homes and residential. I started my business in Wyoming here, literally January of 24. So I'm still on my first year and a half right now. And we were mostly doing just small jobs, focusing on things. I have licenses I'm a master plumber, and I have electrical licenses for doing HVAC and well systems and pumps and irrigation systems and things like that with the state of Wyoming. And then I have Cody, Wyoming is a big city here by Yellowstone National Park is where my ranch is. I live on a ranch here, like a hobby ranch, we have cattle and stuff. And I've been here since 2006. So I had friends always asking me, neighbors, friends that knew I was from the trades and business, and they said, Rob, can you help us with this? We can't get anybody to answer a phone. We can't get contractors to even call us back. And these are people that were relocating here and had money, because they were retirees from the coasts or wherever, big cities, and sold a house, retired, blah, blah, blah. So they get out here and they're very frustrated when they come to this little market we have. Cody, Wyoming alone is less than 10,000 people. And the greater area, maybe 30 or 40,000 people. That's a 100-mile radius almost. So we live here right in the Rocky Mountain area.
How in the
So
world, just real quick, how in the world did you end up in Cody, Wyoming, Yellowstone National Park? What brought you all the way out from Maryland?
that's a good question. From Arlington, Virginia, actually. Yeah, right by Maryland.
Arlington. I'm sorry.
Running away, literally running away because I was burnt out from growing the Cook Brothers there and I was a Remax real estate agent for a few years. And then we started doing paint jobs for customers and blah, blah, blah. And it grew into the big company that we have now, relatively big, about $7 million a year volume. And
Yeah.
I don't work at all in it. So the reason I came out here is because I was so burnt out. I retired in 1994 or 1996. I retired in 1996 and replaced myself by having systems and training one of my guys that started with us to take over. And he's been with me 32 years now, Steve. And so I said, okay, I'm out. And then I did something I always wanted to do and never did because life and kids and money and making a living got in the way, was go to law school. So I actually went to law school after I retired and graduated from law school at George Mason University. I got one of my grandkids. Shh, I'm on a podcast. I've got grandkids here visiting the ranch right now.
Cool.
Yeah, so we ended up going to law school, graduated, and then I basically said, okay, I'm out of here. Because it'd take me to the traffic so bad in the metro area. It's what you hear people complain about, like in LA, and all the big highways and freeways there. It takes you an hour to go 10 miles or 20 miles. I just got burnt out on that. I was able to run away, so we did. So I moved out here I wanted to go do wildlife photography. So
wildlife photography.
Yep. And I specialized in bears, like grizzly bears.
And grizzly bears.
Yeah, that'll come into play a little later. I think you'll talk about my new branding here that
okay.
Up. But basically, I moved out here just to run away, get out of traffic, get out of the rat race, and try to enjoy the good life. So back then, and when that was about 2001 or two, I think I bought like $100,000 worth of Canon equipment. Camera, the state of the art $8,000 SLR cameras and $12,000 big lenses for wildlife photography.
Oh, that's cool.
And I ended up buying a $550,000 motor coach, for a motorhome.
Oh my gosh.
I came out here, drug a car with me, and then I started going to Yellowstone and then drove up to Alaska a bunch of times. And I got tired of driving that big bus home. all the way back to Virginia. It was like 5 days each way for me driving that thing, and it's 44 feet long. So it's just expensive to operate, just a pain.
Yeah.
So I say, I'm going to buy a place or something out here, build a barn and leave that big bus, motor coach in it and then fly back home, back and forth.
Yeah.
And my wife, Andy, who had been married, I guess, 42 years, 43 years, she was,
Awesome.
she's my partner in business and everything as well. And she was still in the business working, back in Virginia. So once I found a place out here, that's what brought me out here, was just running away, retiring, running away, trying to just do something I always wanted to do, never could afford or got around to. And I was making $1 million a year in net income, from business while I was doing that. So it was kind of a nice work situation. So I was able to play and do all that. And I kind of, like everything I do it intensely and kind of to the point of breaking it off. And I ended up doing that for about 6 or 7 years and have all kinds of photography, assets that I just enjoy looking at. I shared some with visitors from Switzerland last night that were visiting us that I met in Yellowstone on the side of the road when they were on their honeymoon 21 years ago. So it's funny. So we ended up, that's what brought me here. So I'm in a community that's 30 miles from Cody, right on the Montana border. I'm 8 miles from Montana. And so we're in the middle of nowhere. I'm 6 miles from the base of the Rocky Mountains here. So I look out my window and I see the mountains, and that's where we live. And it's just peaceful.
Wow.
Nearest neighbor is about a mile away, and very small community. But people are just isolated. And even in Cody, you just can't get good help for anything. I mean, it's frustrating to people, but to the extent of ridiculous. It's like, I don't care what it costs, but just come out. So I specialized in things that needed people didn't mess around, dickering over a price or something. It's like, okay, I got sewage backing up in my basement 6 inches deep, or I can't flush my toilets or whatever because it's backing up. They just say, can you come now? I don't, if they don't usually verbalize it, but they don't really care what it costs, right? As long as I can get out there and respond and do it. And they can't put up with that for 2 or 3 weeks till somebody gets around to maybe calling them back. So that's just in the most simple thing, plumbing. And then the same thing for wells. A lot of people out here on water well systems. So if their water well goes down, it's kind of hard to live without water, folks. It's worse than not having AC. So, they don't mess around. Same thing. So I went into that business and got all the licenses, 3 licenses with the state of Wyoming for that. Got my master plumber's license, I guess, 12, 13 years ago here. And then I ended up branching into HVAC, and I would do that and helping people. So I kind of learned it. But I mean, I didn't come from the trades, never went to trade school, never did HVAC, never worked in the business. And I'd say that I'm a pretty doggone good HVAC service tech. I'm running all our service calls now. So my good guy can be, and his crew can be doing installations, every day. So I'm running and doing all the service calls, which is instrumental in me learning how to sell the business, because the whole point of not to sell my operation, but to sell work. Because that's the model, right? You go do service calls to earn the right to do the replacement business if and when that's the time is right for customers.
Yeah, that's drinking from the fire hose too. So your Cody, okay, so your Cook Brothers Cody branch is not 8 months old with the wells, plumbing, and sewage. It's much older. How many years? The heating and air, I know you just added.
Even then, only January.
Oh, really?
But the plumbing license I got a long time ago. And I did drain cleaning because that's what I enjoyed doing and specializing in, because plumbers hate doing it. It fills their van up with equipment for drain snakes and cameras and all that. So I got into that about 2011 or 12 or something. And then I did that for a while, and it's just like, I was just working myself, not even interested in growing a business or having employees. I was just doing that just as something to keep me busy, and I enjoy doing it.
That's awesome, man.
But HVAC, I mean, I literally, it sounds like ridiculous, but I am a YouTube product. I've learned well business professionally, and I've had to take all kinds of licensing exams for knowledge and, electrical exams and plumbing and hydraulics and wells and all the plumbing you guys can imagine. You get plumbing licenses. There's extensive amount of testing, and electrical too. So I've done all those things and learned them to the extent, pass the test, like book learning, pretty easy, right? And for me, it is. And I'm not an academic, but I just learned stuff intensely. But YouTube is where I learned how to really do the business, because I never was a helper. I never worked in the trades as an apprentice. I never went to trade school for HVAC. I'm talking about particularly. And by using YouTube intelligently, and I've watched probably 1,000 hours of YouTube videos that are of all these. There's so much content out there. And that's, of course, how I found Pete. And once I started learning a little bit about the business and learning a little bit about, from everything from the refrigeration cycle, it's just incredible, guys. For basically free online, you can learn so much. And I learned so much from Pete to help me get started. And then I figured out, once I started actually getting some business coming in on the HVAC side, I realized how much I didn't know and how much help I needed. And I'm educated, book learning educated, and I can devour information and remember it, retain it, and then apply it in real life pretty easily. So since I got gray hair, people assume I've been in business for 30 years because I talk and act like it, and I know what I'm doing for troubleshooting and diagnostics and everything else. And I can kind of pull that off, and without ever lying or misrepresenting. But I've truly been in the contracting business 44 years, so and even longer in home building. So I do have the creds in that sense, but I had very little real world experience. And running a business and being a tradesman, two different things. I've had this a whole life with, I guess hundreds of employees. I've never counted it up that I've had in a carpentry staff, particularly, as well as architects, managers, and all levels of managers, in our companies. And we ended up, you just learn that it is so different, the skill sets and the knowledge base and what you need to know to run a company or be a business owner or operator is so different than actually just being a great technician, for instance, in HVAC. You can be the greatest technician in the world, and you can't get off the ground. You might work 80 hours a week as a one-man band in HVAC to do 500,000 or 600,000 a year, and you don't even realize that you're making less than the fry cook at McDonald's. Period. Hourly wage, if even that. But you feel good because you're your own boss, or whatever ego's wrapped around that, or whatever. Sure. But it's too many hats to wear. So I've decided to buy a one-man band company here because his dad retired a couple of years ago, and he's been in business 13 years here. And I had hired him to do work on my rental properties. I own about 74 rentals here that I own, and that was one of my things that kept me busy for many years, renovating old crappy ones and fixing them up, and then of course maintaining them, because they're old places. There's always something. So that's another income stream for me that makes me kind of able to do a lot of different things that make it might be harder for smaller companies. So I was able to give my perspective, and I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up, if that hadn't come through. But I basically am devoted to doing this HVAC business and being able to start a business in this world, in this day and age, when we have internet and even AI now, and all the benefits, cell phone technology, and all the texting and communications and smartphones. It's hard for anybody under the age of 45 or 50 probably to even imagine what it would be like operating or even living day to day without those things. And so when I started my last company, the internet was just non-existent at all. It was still 10 years away almost before it became prevalent. Smartphones for the most part didn't really come out till 2007 and 8. Right. So I'd already been in business for 20 years by then, 21, 22 years, whatever it was. So, starting now, I just had it in my blood that I want to start a company availing myself of all this modern technology and the benefits and the opportunities for, instead of $25,000 Yellow Page ad, it was basically worthless to me, back in the 80s. Now I can do that same amount of advertising for $100 or even free, just by optimizing your web page or your Google business or whatever. And in my pond I work in here, I don't know what it is, but it's a chicken and egg. It's very hard to get people. You'd think in a place with a small population, you'd have all kinds of workforce available, to hire and train. Just not the case. I think most of the kids here grow up and want to get the hell out of, Wyoming, and go to the big city or whatever else they watched on reality TV. So it's hard to get anybody here that isn't either burnout or already in their own business or just whatever cascaded, a bunch of reasons they're ignorant. But I started to say about employees. That's a key to any business, as far as I'm concerned, a service business, whether it's remodeling big jobs or service call oriented businesses like our HVAC businesses are. So most of the employees I've run through over the years were highly skilled, or I wouldn't have hired them. And if I do hire them and they're misrepresented, then we don't keep them. We get rid of them if they oversold themselves and don't know how to operate. So I've been paying guys 25 to 30 bucks an hour for almost 40 years. Just to give you an example. And that's a lot. It costs a lot. That's just the actual ways that they get paid. So our burden price is much higher. And this all comes home to roost because I don't need a job. I'm 66 years old, make $1.5 million a year, without working. So I don't need a job. I'm doing this for the challenge of building the business, learning new stuff myself, building a team, building a business, and then having something that without any intention of building the business to sell it someday, I'm going to do it as if I was. And that means you have to systematize it. You have to have everything where you can hand it off, like I did with Steve, whatever, 25 years ago, 27, 28 years, almost 20, 30 years ago. I handed it off to Steve, who started with me in Virginia for 12, 15 hours a carpenter. And the last 2 years, I've paid him combined for 23 and 24. I paid him 1.4 million. So
Wow.
let that sink in. And I'm the only owner of the company. He's a W-2 employee. He pays his taxes. But the bottom line is that it's there. You can do it, and if you stick around with something, and like he did, and he had a college degree before he started with me from George Washington University, a private university there in Washington D.C. So just a really smart guy. Didn't have his ego wrapped around have his name on the company or being the owner. He couldn't care less. He just worked hard with us. We were drinking buddies every night, worked together or whatever, and then grew into handing the job off to him. So about 2-3 years, he literally was my shadow for 2-3 years, like you do ride-alongs, with new employees for HVAC or whatever technicians. You ride them along have them ride along in the van for a week or two or a month or 3 or whatever with your senior techs or yourself or whatever, to train them and then get them started right, and not just throw them out to the wolves, and then sink or swim, because it's too important to train them. So I did that with Steve, and it paid off, because now I haven't had to work for basically since 1996, right? And then I still work because it's in my DNA or something. My dad's an Army colonel, and he never paid anybody to do anything, but needed doing, whether it was a car or fixing something on the house, we did it. And so I learned from the time I was 5 years old that you got to be self-sufficient. If you don't know how to do it, figure it out. Well, nowadays you got YouTube. It's easy. Back then it was hard to learn stuff, and you had to do it the hard way. So now you can learn the business, the trade. You learn the trade, whatever that may be, very well online. And then when you have that kind of book learning and vicarious, vicarious experience, where I watch these guys making all these high quality videos that are technicians, they're one-man bands, whatever. I might have 2 or 3 employees maybe, and they're just giving so freely, because I know how much time it takes to produce videos and content to put on YouTube regularly. It's like a whole another full-time job. But these guys do it even though they have very successful businesses, and it's just like it fulfills something in them, like passing it on, passing it down, or whatever the things that when you get successful and older and you know stuff, you just want to share it. You don't want it to die with you, and you don't, you want to be able to pass that on. Well, that's what these guys are doing. So YouTube is incredible. Pete's a perfect example of that, because I devoured a lot of his online content because of all the HVAC videos. YouTube obviously sent content to me of people that were in the HVAC industry, things that it thought I'd be interested in, I'd suggest things. And so Pete came up one day, I don't even remember when that was, maybe 6 months ago, and I started watching him. And I said, wow, this guy, among all the so-called gurus out there, Pete was the most real and, sincere and smart and intelligent and on point type of person that I had come across out of dozens of them. I'm pretty well read, you might say, on YouTube. So that's how I met Pete. And then finally I got to a point where I said, this is stupid. I need to hire Pete, because I got the impression from what he's doing that, of course, he had courses that had online courses that you could buy, and he had coaching available. So I said, you know what? This is stupid for me to try to reinvent the wheel myself, because I'm already up to my butt in alligators and all the other stuff I'm doing, starting the company up. And I have 7 or 8 employees, and I'm busy all the time, and different kinds of businesses too, guys. It's not as simple as me, just HVAC. I've got wells, window wells, construction, flooring, window replacements, and on and on and on, as well as HVAC here in my little new startup company here. So it's doing well, and I'm learning. And I hired Larry that I mentioned. I bought his company. So I bought his little company about, it's literally just 2 months ago or so. And just out of the blue, I just approached him at a home show we were doing in our little town here, Powell, Powell, Wyoming, 30 miles away from Cody, that does a little garden show every year, and you can set a booth up and do that. So he had done that the year before with me, my first year, not with me, but as an additional, exhibitor. And I knew him from working and hiring him to work on my rental properties. I was kind of starting to say, and then I ended up, I kind of laughed because I felt like here I am in my booth, right near my competitor, the exhibitor, Better Comfort Solutions, and Larry and his wife were over in that booth. And I said, you know what? You guys man the booth. I had one or two people there, including Andy, manning the booth, talking to customers when they came by and stuff. And so I said, I had the balls, is the only way I know how to say it, to go up to this guy at his booth, in a competitive booth at a home show, and ask him if he was interested in coming to work with me. It's really like no indication otherwise for the 2 or 3 years I've known of him and worked with him. I just always liked him. I liked his work. I run across his installations when I'm doing other kinds of bids for people. And he was receptive. And I asked him about it a few days ago or sometime. He brought it up and we were chatting. He said, yeah, he said, man, it's so weird when you just walk over to my booth in the middle of my show. I said, get the hell out of here. That's what he's thinking. Just go away. I'm trying to do something. And of course, I was respectful not to interfere with his customers. I actually sat back out of the way when people walk up, and I'm watching them in action with them, and that sold me even further. Long story short, about 2 or 3 weeks later, I bought his company. And the reason I did that is because Larry was 21 years, he's 43 years old, 21 years in the business as an HVAC guy. Never went to trade school either. He just worked for a bunch of different companies as a tech and so forth down in Arizona, Tucson. And then he moved to Cody, Wyoming, and he didn't learn from his dad either. He actually brought his dad in, who was a general contractor, and trained him in HVAC. So they basically dropped off all the general contracting stuff and became an HVAC company, just the two of them. And they did that down in Arizona, and then they moved to Cody, Wyoming about 11 years ago or 12 years ago, something like that. And I had been here already 6 or 8 years before that, but I didn't know him, of anything about it. But anyway, he's the smartest guy I know, besides maybe Pete, just very highly intelligent. And Steve's the same category, And so these people, he was in a point where he knew what he should be doing. And it was getting ridiculous because his business here was 12 years old, whatever it was, and his phone's ringing all the time. He has to wear an earbud, so while he's doing a service call or while he's installing, he's getting phone calls. So it's very hectic being a one-man band like that. And his dad retired last year. His dad was kind of a little bit getting dead baggage for 4 or 5 last years anyway. He's kind of like on his way to retirement. So they parted ways a year ago or so. And then, so Larry now was on his own for a year, and he was like, this ain't fun, And the same thing, he didn't understand a lot of the business side of it. Very smart, very good technician, the best diagnostician I know and installer by far. And I've known a lot of them. And but he realized his limitations because there's only so many hours in a day, and he's nobody to share being on call with. So if you're going to have an HVAC business, it's not a 9 to 5 job. When people need something, you got to go, right? If they want to pay the time and a half or whatever, double time, whatever you charge, I don't care if it's a holiday, weekend, evening. I've gone out and done HVAC calls here at 2 in the morning, 2 a.m., where they lost their heat. And it's a older couple, whatever, in the house, and no heat, and it was 40 below zero Fahrenheit outside. So it's not funny because in a matter of 8 or 10 hours, the pipes could freeze in the house as well as people die. So 2 in the morning, me and my wife, I remember that like yesterday. It's not as rare, but you just do it. So, being a one-man band, that's hard to do because that was before, way before, that was like 8 months ago, 10 months ago. So you have to, you have to understand your limitations, and everybody has them. Some are more limited than others in whatever way you measure it. Some people are great technicians, but they suck dealing with people, or they hate dealing with people, or they don't have people skills, or they hate being a salesman. They can't stand it. They're the greatest technician in the world, but they can't stand, selling, which is you either do or you don't in business, And so he only had so much time in a day. And so he's very smart, and he realized he's just getting frustrated. It's like, the more successful he was, the more phone calls he got, the less customer service he was providing, the less good less higher level, a lower level, because you could only do so much or so many hours a day. So you can't be doing an installation for somebody that sold a 10 to 15, 25,000 dollar system to, and then continually have to pull off to go do HVAC service calls, because then you're going to piss off the customer that trusted you and hired you. So it's very frustrating. And so he started realizing, and I just hit him at the right time. And he said, yeah, that's perfect, because I enjoy and love the craft and the tech, being a technician and going out and doing diagnostics and repairing stuff and being the hero and all that stuff. But that's not that can't be my primary, or even my I can't afford to do that. That's what I guess I'm getting to. Because if I have to work, as they say, on the company instead of in the company. When I'm working in the company, doing the work myself out in the field, just like Larry, then I'm just repeating the same BS again. This is a broken record. It ain't going to get better. You know, the definition of insanity, they say, is like doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. So I was falling right back into that. And I'm saying, okay, hold on. I gotta become a business owner and act like a business owner and do business owner stuff. Even though I like playing with my tools and customers and going out and doing all that, diagnostics and hero stuff. I can't do that, because if I do that, Larry's not going to have installs to do and keep him busy. And the business is not going to be on a paying basis. And therefore, it's going to be a very expensive hobby. It'd be cheaper for me to go cruise around the world than it is to run a business that's like a bucket with holes in it. And no matter how much more water I pour in, it just goes out of the bucket faster. In other words, my money. So I'm reorienting to that, and I started realizing how little I know about a service call business, because I've never done that. Our jobs are $300,000 average, up to $800,000 in my prior experience. So now I'm doing something that I charge $150 for a service call. It's like, I lose $200 when we drive up in the driveway. It costs me $200 to send Larry or myself to drive up in the driveway. So we have to, that's a loss leader, the way I look at it, and it's the way the business is formed. So we've determined from Pete and lots of other so-called gurus, and I say so-called because Pete's the one I settled with, because he's genuine and very extremely knowledgeable. And so resonated with me. I realized that I had a lot of holes in my knowledge, understanding, and experience, and I needed to fill them. And I didn't want to take 10 years to do it, because I'll be dead by then. So I said, okay, let's go ahead and find the right people. I reached out to Pete, and we hit it off. And we've been working together for months. I don't know how many months. And I hired him for not just coaching, and I bought all of the access to all of his courses and everything online, paid for those. And then I hired him as a coach, where we do webinar videos through Zoom. I think we had basically 2-hour sessions once a week for quite a while, and made a great bargain on that. It's a very good bargain, the amount of stuff we do. And then I went to the next level with Pete and hired him for branding. And I hardly even knew what that really meant. So the name of my company, Cook Brothers, here, is like a stupid name to call any company that you really want to be able to sell or market or whatever, because it doesn't mean anything to anybody. But I was stuck in it, like a lot of people are, because I've had that company since '86. That name, I liked it. I don't even have any brothers anymore. My brothers came and went in the business a couple times over the many years, and so even my kids did. My adult sons now, the oldest is 40, and they worked in the company. And then of course they went on to their own, because that's what family stuff is. So we ended up deciding and learning from Pete that, just getting a .com URL for your name of your company that you think is the most clever name of the company you ever figured out on your own, or whatever, in a vacuum, and then you go out and start charging for it, and it's literally going off half cocked. And so I don't have time to do a stutter step. I don't have 6 or 8 or 10 years to kind of fumble through and learn this on my own. I want to do it now, and I want to do it so that I'll have a company in 5 years or 3 years even that I could sell if I wanted to. I don't plan on it, knowing I don't need the money, and I'm not planning on it. But if you don't build a company that you can sell, then you don't really have a company, probably. Because an outside company, whether it's a private equity company or a competitor or whatever, like I bought Larry, right? So if you don't have a systematized, process oriented business that's running and staffed and in operation, that you don't have to be there. If you personally have to be there as the owner, or you're personally getting hands on doing stuff in the business, then you're not really a business. You're really a practice or a job, okay, or some combination thereof. Just because you have employees doesn't mean that you're a businessman. That doesn't mean you're a real business. So that's what I learned and figured out on my own. And with Pete's help, definitely put a big edge on it. And the first part of that is branding, because it's not what I would react to as a 66-year-old rich old guy. It's not what I would respond to in marketing. It's what would the average homeowner that owns an HVAC system and needs HVAC work, what would they respond to? What would that name or that marketing logo or your website or on and on and on, what would all of those outward appearances that the public can see through marketing and just vehicles and wraps or whatever you got, yard signs, you name it, what do they see? What impression will that branding, that snippet of imagery that they see, what impact or feeling will that create in those individual people that are the ones that are going to hire me or not, right? So I'm not really working for a lot of people like me that are my age and also, well off or independently wealthy or whatever you want to call it. There are those out here, a lot of rich people that move here, and they're billionaires. I work for several billionaires with a B. And they're just like average, normal people to me. I treat them the same as I do somebody that has two household working, making 80,000 a year together. I treat them the same way, and they like it and they appreciate it. So anyway, we have to market a company to be successful. You have to present an image that pre-sells them on your company. It pre-sells people before they ever talk to you or the company or a salesman or owner or a service tech or anybody. They are already 70% decided to hire you instead of all the other options and all the other possible alternative competitors. So how do you do that? Because otherwise you're fighting an uphill battle. This isn't about getting in the door and then putting a strong arm sales pitch on them and all the high pressure stuff. That's a losing proposition to me in general. I wouldn't even want to do it. So I want people to really want us and they want to work with us. And to do that, they're going to have to understand that, what they get from me and my team and our company is not the same as what they get from Chuck in a truck, one-man band who doesn't have the bandwidth, who doesn't have the staying power, and doesn't have the backup for instance, for emergency after hours type stuff. They just don't have it. There's only so many hours in a day. They got to sleep sometime. The weekends are shot already for those guys. If they're doing their job, and as a result, the customer service sucks. So you're going to spend $18,000 with this guy that is going to give you half-ass service and probably not a very good installation, just whatever you can do to get by and get it done, get out the door to the next one. And you're going to pay $16,000 for that, or you can pay $20,000 for us and get a professional, effective, solution-oriented thing. We're not going to throw a new, equipment system in place using the same old crappy ductwork. If it has 3 tons worth of ductwork and I'm going to put a 5-ton compressor and furnace system in, that's ridiculous. It's like trying to put 3 gallons into a 1-gallon jug. It ain't going to work. And it's nowadays with all of our modulating and variable speed equipment, it will destroy the equipment because the equipment's going to ramp up and down trying to compensate for the high static, and it's just not going to work. It's going to burn itself out and cause all kinds of malfunctions. And that's true with inverter systems and ductless mini split systems we put in, the same thing. I've heard that 98% of all the HVAC installations, AC particularly they talk about, but 98% of all HVAC installations and systems in the United States are oversized. Now you got to think about that because that's ridiculous. And a lot of reason for that is because the guys that are doing it don't even know how to do a load calculation for manual J, etc. They don't even understand ductwork at all. So I've taken and gotten just literally a month ago, I took a full 3-day live course at a distributor for NCI certification for residential duct balancing and residential duct optimization. And that's me, the owner. And I took, just myself. Oh no, Larry went with me. So we basically went there and we learn all that stuff because we want to use it. I don't have to sell that. It's just that if we're not going to do a system for someone that's not going to be comfortable and actually work, because that's an ultimate failure. We make a few dollars, but then we make a customer that's going to go around and feel poorly toward us, if not even worse, go around spreading the word that, yeah, we trusted them and went with them, and they slammed in this $28,000 system and whatever, and gave us all this sales pitch about how they're whatever, but it doesn't work. I don't get airflow in this room. It's unbalanced. It just doesn't keep up when it gets hot outside or when it's cold outside. It's too noisy. I hear the whistling registers, all these things. It's like, then you're screwed. Everything you put into that system, you might have to tear it all out to fix it and replace the equipment and all the ductwork that you paid for. So that's an ultimate failure. And we don't use scare tactics, but we paint that picture for our prospective customers, and they get it. And they believe us because we don't BS, and we can talk the game, and we know what we're doing. We do all those things, and I use technology to do the load calculation on every job, because I'm not going to assume just because they have a 3-ton now that's 20 years old and wore out that I'm going to put another 3-ton in, because they might need a 2-ton or they might need a 4-ton. And what's done typically by most of my so-called competitors is, if it's a 3-ton there, they say, yeah, it's not keeping up, it's not working good. Okay, let's put in a 4-ton system, and don't change any ductwork or plenums or anything or airflow. And it's worse. It costs more, it's worse, and it just wears itself out, and it burns out in 6, 8, 10 years instead of lasting 20 years like it probably would if it was balanced right. So that's my push, and that's something I've learned from Pete as well. And Larry is exactly in lockstep with me on all that, and he is an expert on all this stuff. So I'm leaning on Larry heavily for all the technical side. We go on sales calls together. So as much as it costs me, I'm paying him by the hour, usually overtime, because he works so many hours right now while I'm catching up. And so we go on the sales calls together once we identify a system that needs to be replaced. We'll make an appointment, go sit down, go through the homeowner's house, spend an hour or two there, do a load calc using an iPad system, Conduit Tech, I can highly recommend. Do it right in front of their eyes while Larry's talking to them about their options, and we look at the ductwork and the installation and everything else, and hear them out. And by the time we walk away, I often walk away from that initial call with a $5,000 check without having any specifications to them or actual pricing. I just say, based on our experience, this is going to cost you between, $19,000 and $23,000, depending on how it comes out after we do all the further work. But we don't go back and put another 10 or 12 hours in until you hire us. Okay. So if you hire us, the way you do it is you give us a check today, and then we'll go back, spec out the equipment, check availability of it, get all the specs for it, write up a detailed proposal telling you all the details and whether it has zoning or this or that or whatever we do in it, send it to them with a final price of $21,900, and they already have a $5,000 deposit toward us. If that's agreeable, then we're going to get an additional deposit from you, bringing it up to 50% of the total cost. So let's say it's $20,000 job, you gave us $5,000 in that initial, we go back and spend work for another 3 or 4 days, get back to them with a firm fixed bid price. And that way we're not getting shopped. We're not doing all of this work, giving it to them, and then they take it out and go shop it with all the other idiots in town that don't even understand what they're looking at. And then they'll just price it, shop us against it. I don't play that, because if I did that, I'd have to charge twice as much for every job I do. And that ain't fair. So we're a consultant as well as the installation and repair guys. Which brings us to the next point, is that we're rebranding our company by an enormous amount of time spent with Pete and myself and my wife trying to figure that out. What we want to be to the public, how we want to appear to them, who we want to work with, what kind of customer do we want to appeal to, and therefore what kind of branding do we need, and what kind of message do we need to communicate non-verbally, perhaps, just from the wrap and the logo and the image or whatever of our vehicles, and that will give people a feeling. And that's another word I've learned from not just information, but a feeling about us. Like, wow, I want those guys. And then they call us, and that's the beginning of the deal. And so that's what I learned from Pete, and we decided, based on my and Larry's long time philosophy, is that we don't like screwing people over. I don't need the money at all. So the last thing I want to do is be crapping in my own nest here where I live because it's a small town community. And the last thing I'm going to do is, ever get the reputation of, I don't care if I'm the reputation of being high priced. I don't care. I've done that for 50 years. I don't care. I enjoy that. And it hadn't hurt me one bit in my business, by the way. But I don't want to be the guy that let people down. That people talk about, yeah, we hired them and they overpromised, underdelivered, in the technical terms. They just basically, crapped the bed with us and did not do what they promised. So yeah, I wouldn't use them, and they were expensive too. Okay, you don't want to go there. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, Rob, as we wind this down, I wanted to ask you to summarize with this in mind. So the typical viewer, they're watching this to learn something. They're younger than you and I. They have limited resources, and a lot of them are limited by their own let's call it experience in the heating and air business. When you came into this, you didn't have that. We did the demographic research. We looked at your market. We looked at your competitors. We looked at the opportunities. We came in and we crafted a unique marketing position for you. And out of that came a brand. What were you going through? What advice, if we hit the bullet points, what advice would you give to viewers today who they're either starting that business or more commonly they're stuck? They're stuck and they think it's the market. They think it's their lack of employees. They think it's all these different things. You don't have that stigma in the way. You're coming in from a fresh perspective in heating and air. However, you got a lot more experience in the business world than even myself. What bullet points, highlights would you suggest for guys today who really want to take it to the next level in spite of this economy and all the stuff that's going on?
Excellent question. And I think I can do that. I rambled around a lot there just by way of giving my philosophy and letting you get to know me, I guess, without any script. I mean, this is literally, I think, the first podcast I've ever done. So I think number one is that regardless of where you're at in your business, if you've been doing it 20 years but you're just really repeating the first year over 20 times, you don't have 20 years experience unless you're making a lot of money. Okay. Because there's no excuse for being in this business and not making a lot of money. And when I say that, if you're a one-man band, you should be making $150,000 to $200,000 a year net. Okay. Otherwise, come work for somebody like me because you're doing way too much work, taking too much risk and not making money. It's just stupid. So number one, you need to understand your numbers. When we say numbers, we're talking about dollars, we're talking about all the numbers. And Pete, more than anybody I've ever met, made me aware of this, even though I've been in business a long time. You got to know what it costs you to do business. And just because you already own your truck that you've had for 10 years doesn't mean it's free. Just because your wife does the bookkeeping and paperwork and some of the secretarial type services for you and you don't pay her anything, because why not? She can do it for you while she's at home anyway. It ain't free. Just because you are using your house for an office or your garage or your shop building at your home for your business address, and so you think you don't have any overhead, you do. Okay. And so if you're going to sell the business, think about that, what I said earlier. If you're going to sell your business, it's not about, how pretty your installation looks and how nice of installs and how clean your ductwork and everything looks and all that. That the person that's going to buy your business couldn't care less about that. They take that for granted, but they see it and they know that because of your numbers. So you have to keep good records. And if you don't keep good records, it's garbage in, garbage out. You will not know. As smart as Larry is, he really doesn't have hardly a clue. And he's been using QuickBooks for years. He has an accountant, a CPA, but he doesn't really have a clue how much money he's been making for the last 20 years, or rather how much he should have been making and lost and was losing. So as smart as he is, I'm telling you, he's smart as I am, but he just has different experience and different knowledge.
Yep.
Pete, fill that hole. So number one is know your numbers, because when I tell you, when I send a tech or myself to drive up into somebody's driveway on a service call, I know it cost me $300 out of my pocket, whether they just go in the driveway and turn around and leave. $300 cost. I can only charge them about $150 to be, or I'm just going to price myself out of the market because all the stupid competition has taught people over the years that, we'll do it for $99. We'll do it for whatever. And anybody who believes that is stupid. You go to a car dealership and they charge you $175 an hour for shop time. That's where you're bringing it to them. Their guys have their tools right there in the garage bay. You're in line and they pull you in and they work on you and the clock's ticking, $175 an hour. Right. And then you don't ever argue about that. Everybody bitches about it, but nobody argues. You pay it. Well, we're taking our shop to their house. We're sending a guy to their house. He's got to drive there and get back. So that's expensive because if it's an employee like Larry's not going to drive 30 minutes one way, get there, spend 30 minutes, and then drive 30 minutes back to the next job for free. He's on the clock. Tick tock. I'm paying him. And he literally cost me burdened about $75 an hour for every hour. And that's not overtime. He's always getting overtime time and a half doing paperwork and everything else because it's just what it takes right now. So you got to pay. I'm paying for it. I can't say, Larry, I know you drove for 4 hours today coming and going from a job, but, and you got 4 hours on site. So I'm only going to charge you for 4 hours. I'm only going to pay you for 4 hours. He'll say, well, that's nice, Rob. Bye-bye. Because I can't live on 4 hours a day pay. So I got to pay him for 8 hours, and I got to pay for the truck and for the gas and for the tools and for the overhead and for me and Andy and our bookkeeper and our payroll services and our insurance and blah, blah, blah. So know your numbers. If you don't know your numbers, you're just going bankrupt on the installment plan. You're literally working yourself to death, out of business. You won't have a pot to piss in or anything to show for it 20 years later. And that's ridiculous. You could do that working for any other job out there in the world at McDonald's or at Walmart or whatever, and you get benefits, right? So number one, know your numbers. Number two is realize that we are in a people business. And so in our business, HVAC, as I've learned, there's a big divide, very clear divide between install people and service people. Not even mentioning possible salespeople or comfort advisors or whatever cute name they want to call it. Basically, there's people that like working with people, and there's people that like working with their tools and not being bothered, not talking to people. And you need them both. But you have to understand that when you're the only one, when you're a one-man band, you are both. So you've got to pull them both out of the bag and carry it and not drop the ball, or you're not going to be in business, or you're going to make no money and you're going to be frustrated and life's going to suck. But if you understand that it's a people business, and when people have no heat or no air, no cooling, then it's not a trivial matter that they can wait when it's convenient for you to call them back or get back to them. It's serious to them because it could even be a health issue. But when it's 40 below zero, like it is around here in the winter, it could be $200,000 or $300,000 worth of damage that occurs in 36 hours to a house, from pipes bursting and freezing and flooding the whole house or whatever. So you have to be very careful about, living in your own head. Well, I'm busy. I'm overwhelmed. I haven't had a day off in 6 months. I work 80 hours a week, blah, blah, blah. The customer couldn't care less. They called you. And if you want to get their business and earn it and build a business by building a list of those happy customers that you can then market to, and they'll call you every time they need something from now on and tell their friends about you. That's a good thing. Go the other direction. Everybody you work for, you piss them off, then you're digging your hole faster. You're putting more holes in your bucket that you're filling up with money. You're faster than you can fill it. So you're just treading water. So know your numbers, and then know that it's a people business. And you put people first, and in their minds, your customer prospects, they don't even want to hear that you have other customers in business. They want to be it. They're the only one in their mind because that's the way people think. And so if you give them the impression that they're your number one priority, and you're going to jump right on and you're going to take care of them, and they're the most important thing in the world to you, even if you have 14 other customers and jobs going at the same time. Some of these big companies like Gettle, they're out of Vegas and now about 12 other locations around the country. They have, I think, 900 service vehicles. So, imagine that, how many balls they could be dropping every day. And with each service tech on each one of those trucks is doing 5 service calls a day, 5 days a week. The numbers are astounding. Well, if you can't manage yourself as your own guy, or one tech, one truck, or two vans, or whatever you're running, you sure as hell can't manage bigger. But if you can manage those two or three, which is exactly how, Ken started out, I don't know him, but the guy that owns Gettle now and built that big business, that's exactly how they did it. They started with one. It was him and his dad when he was a kid. His dad was HVAC guy, and he started with them. So Ken Goodrich is his name of the guy. But and he's called Pete before, by the way, just to give you an idea. So the numbers, if you don't do that, you're literally shooting in the dark. You don't know whether to charge $100 an hour, or $200 an hour, or $300 an hour, or $400 an hour. You're screwed. You're just like a playing Russian roulette with a gun and putting it up to your head every time you do it. So you got to know your numbers. Otherwise, you could be working your butt off and doing everything right and losing money faster than you can dream. A lot of these big HVAC companies that just go and buy a bunch of companies and grow and whatever, they might be doing $30-40 million in revenue top line a year, but they may be losing money on all of it, not making any profit at all. It's like, what is the point? And so that's not unusual, by the way. So you don't want to be that. Okay, if you're going to do that, just go get a job somewhere and go work for somebody like me. Look me up online and call me if you're in that boat and you're just a great technician. You love working, you love installing, you love diagnosing, you love fixing stuff, but you're tired of working 80 hours a week to get 40 hours pay at 1/3 of what you should be getting paid as by an hourly wage without any of the headaches or risk. So know your numbers and be a people person and understand you don't treat these people like they're a number out there, because they'll sense it and they will vote with their feet and go somewhere else. They're going to take their money where they appreciate it. I'd say number 3 would be, don't get hung up on your ego that you think you can do this alone. Because I've known a lot of people, including Larry, including myself, including others, who are smart and experienced and knowledgeable, and we can't do it alone. Can't do it alone. It's impossible. If you're going to be in business, then recognize it and respect it for what it is. It's a business. So number 3 is, know your limitations. Don't be an idiot, right? As Clint Eastwood said in one of those movies, a man's got to know his limitations. Well, we all do. And if you think you're Superman and you can do it all, well, you're just working yourself to death into bankruptcy. You don't know it because you don't even know how to keep track of the numbers, but you're doing it. And it ain't going to get better, and life's not going to get better. It's not going to magically get better with time, like a fine wine. It's going to go into the toilet, and you're going to wake up broke. And you have one bad incident or one bad spell where the phone doesn't ring, or customers slow pay you, or don't pay you, or pissed off because your system you sold them and installed didn't work right, and they say, I'm not paying you the other $10,000 or $20,000 I owe you. Screw you, sue me. And then all of a sudden the wheels come off and you're bankrupt, unless you're real wealthy and have a lot of money. It takes 1 or 2 of those, and most people, the average American, I think, doesn't have $500 in reserve for an emergency. And that's the average American, okay, of any age. So, 20, 30,000, how many people have that laying around to take it? And how long will that take to deplete your so-called retirement account if you screw a couple of those up? And if you're in business, it's just a matter of time. I'm a lawyer too. I think I tell you that. I have a law degree. So, I get screwed. I screw myself. I'll do something and I screw it up. I drop the ball and I have to eat it, because I know that it'll cost $50,000 or $100,000 to go collect that $5,000 that I'm owed, if I'm lucky and win. Right. And in the meantime, my whole business comes to a standstill if I'm litigating. So that ain't a solution. I'm telling you, that if you're in business, you got a target on your back. And there's people out there that ain't nice people that'll take advantage of you intentionally up front and talk a good game and then suck you into their web and then screw you. And if you haven't been charging enough to build up a savings and a buffer account in your business to handle those kind of things, or slow pays, we're COD. People think I'm like a collection agent to get money. So what do you think, Pete? That's 3 things,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Rob, I appreciate your time. We've gone over a little bit on the time normally. We look forward to seeing what you're going to do out there in Cody. I know you're going to do some big things. You're probably going to own that market within a year, and we're going to be watching you. So thanks again for coming and spending your time and sharing some of your wisdom. Okay.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share with others because I don't have the channel that you do or the time or energy or whatever. I'd love to do it and do what you're doing, but that's
Cool.
like 10 more hats, you know. So instead of trying to wear those 10 hats and fill those shoes, I
Yeah.
hired you, and that's been the
Yeah.
best thing I've done in probably in 30, 40 years because I'm not a big consumer of coaching or whatever. I usually do everything the hard way on my own. And with you, you opened my eyes and I did that. And as a
Cool.
result, I think it's going to happen. I'll win before I fail because
Yeah.
I've got a good
Yeah.
start with you.
Been a learning
So,
experience for me too. I appreciate you. Okay.
good.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Pete. You guys call Pete if you need some help, and don't be stupid about penny wise and pound stupid. Don't do it because you'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars of what you can get from Pete for 2 or 3 or 5,000 or whatever, and you'll benefit from it for the next 10 years instead of just working yourself to death. So
Thanks
good
again.
luck to everybody. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks.